loud. There's that voice. Okay. So yeah, thank you once again, everyone, for attending Art for Everybody, a virtual tour on body acceptance by the Art Gallery Windsor and Banna. I am Michaela Muldoon, the digital initiatives, I'm now the programs coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor, and I'm going to be leading the art portion of this tour. I'm going to allow my colleagues here a chance to introduce themselves as well. Let's start out with a fellow AGW member, Derrick.
Hello, salutations, everyone. Thank you so much, Michaela. So yes, Derrick Carl Biso here. I use they, them pronouns exclusively, and I am the Special Initiatives Coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor. And I'm very happy to be a guest here today to share a loving kindness mindfulness meditation at the very end to kind of close us off and to wrap us up at the end. So thank you so much for having me here, and welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Derrick. Okay, let's hear from Stephanie.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Fincannon. I use she, her pronouns. I am a health educator at Banna. I've been with Banna just about 3 years in August. I really enjoy my role. We get to take part in a lot of unique events and activities and meet a lot of different people. So it's always different, and Banna messaging really does resonate with me as well when it applies to food, weight, and shape. So it really fits my personality and what I believe in. So I always like sharing this information with others in our community. And I'll say, why not Marissa go next, my colleague at Banna?
Thanks so much, Steph. My name is Marissa Casey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a health educator with Banna. I've been there for close to 4 years. And I just want to say thank you for letting us come into the fold today. I really love the title as well. And I think it's always interesting to look at how art informs things like body image and self-esteem. So really looking forward to learning something today too.
All right, thank you everyone for your introductions. I can't wait to get this started with you. So first things first, a little bit of housekeeping. This tour was inspired by just the way the media is always kind of pushing at us this idealized Western standard of beauty, and it's a very lucrative concept too, the way that various industries claim that they can help us fix whatever's wrong with us, or however they choose to frame it. And we're kind of pushing back against that with art, because there is traditionally in fine art, you'll see a wider range of body types than you will in the mass media. So artists choose to portray all sorts of bodies, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at in our collection today. I do have to acknowledge that there are some limits to our collection. So there isn't a huge diversity outwardly, at least in the range of ability or in necessarily in race or skin tone either. And we are working to mitigate that. We are always, adding new things to our collections and working with artists from diverse backgrounds and trying to create diverse partnerships within the community. So we're on our way to getting better. In the meantime, though, I found what I thought were some pretty cool pieces to look at for this theme. Everybody is a good body. So that is what we're going to keep in mind as we go through this presentation. So those are kind of our opening remarks here. So I'm just going to quickly lay out how it's going to go for the rest of the day. I'm going to lead our land acknowledgement, because we always should be mindful of whose land we're on and, we're living on and using. And especially in light of recent events with Kamloops and Saskatoon, it's more important than ever to try to keep this in mind as we go about our lives. After I read the land acknowledgement, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Banna. Their portion will take approximately 30 minutes. We'll come back to me. I'll lead us through the art, and it's going to be anywhere from half an hour to 45 minutes, I would say, based on how much discussion we get about the art. So feel free to put in your 2 cents. No pressure though either, just whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you like. After that, we're going to close it out with Derrick's meditation, and we'll do our last remarks and farewells and be on our way. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing so that Banna may begin sharing. I think, Marissa, you're gonna be the first one to share? Perfect.
Michaela, would you like to do the land acknowledgement before we start?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I just said that I would do that, and then immediately afterwards, yes, hold on. So I will read it. It won't be on screen for you, but I will read it. So while this conversation and recording is happening digitally, today I want to acknowledge that I am physically situated on Anishinaabe territory, the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi. Today, the Anishinaabe of the Three Fires Confederacy are represented by the Walpole Island First Nation. We want to state our respect of the historical and ongoing authority of Walpole Island First Nation over its territory. Thank you for your patience. My goodness, what a bird-brained move. Okay, anyway.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank you for reminding me.
No
no
worries.
worries.
You're able to see that stuff?
Yeah, we can see it
Okay.
perfectly. Wonderful. Okay, so again, like Marissa said, we wanted to thank the Art Gallery for collaborating with BANA on this exciting art tour. Marissa and I are delighted to be here and to learn a little bit more about the art that you have to showcase today. But for our portion, we will just be going through who BANA is, what are eating disorders and disordered eating. We'll get a little bit into body image and diet culture and how our media has a huge influence on how we feel about our bodies. Then we will provide some ideas of how you can support someone who you may suspect has an eating disorder and where else you could get assistance and help. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so you may have heard of BANA. We call it BANA for short, but it does have quite a long name. It's called the Bulimia Anorexia Nervosa Association. Much easier just to say BANA, and we are well known as just BANA throughout the community. And if you're not familiar, BANA is a not-for-profit mental health agency within Windsor-Essex that specializes in the assessment and diagnosis of eating disorders. And we do have an office located downtown Windsor at Olette and Shepherd. So it's pretty central if you're familiar with downtown Windsor. And out of that office, we have a clinical team who treats our clients. And then we also have health promotion. So I will tell you a little bit more about that as we go forward. But just to tell you more about how we started. So we actually started quite a while ago in 1983, and it was founded by Dr. Richard Moriarty. And Dr. Moriarty was a professor at the University of Windsor in the Faculty of Human Kinetics at the time. And he did not, he had a daughter who did have an eating disorder. Unfortunately, her eating disorder was quite severe and it did lead to her passing away. So out of need, really, he started support groups for parents because he recognized that there wasn't any services within our community for those who have eating disorders or for the families affected. So it started out quite small, just, small support groups within small rooms at the university where they would gather and share their experiences. And then throughout time, he was able to gain funding from the government and it grew. So he was able to bring on a social worker and then over time got more funding and brought on more staff. And today we are a staff of 11, I believe. So it's still quite tiny. However, we do have I feel like we do quite a bit in our community for this area, the specialized area of care. And we are very passionate about it. We are funded by the LIN and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And we also operate through fundraising and grants. And we do really rely on those types of support as well. And it's really nice to know that all of our services are free. So that's sometimes comforting to clients when they have fear about accessing care. Our services are free. You can go to the next slide, Marissa. Yeah, it is amazing. I think I'm having a little bit of a delay, so I'm just going to stop my video.
I know your audio is breaking up for me, but did that change for you guys on the screen, the slide? Okay, thank you.
Okay, mine didn't change, but I believe I know what slide we're on, so I'll just continue. So as I mentioned from the top, we provide clinical services. So our team is composed of clinicians who are social workers who provide one-on-one therapy. And then we also have a dietitian. So in tandem to when the client's seeing the social worker, they're seeing the dietitian as well. And we provide cognitive behavioral therapy for our clients that is enhanced for eating disorders. So within research, that's what's known to be best practice for treating individuals with eating disorders. And it is quite intense. So it goes from about 20 to 24 weeks for the client, and it does require work. It's a lot of challenging that individual's thoughts about food, about their body, and about some of the where their thoughts have come from about their body. And we will provide a lot of different resources and body image activities, and then also looking at their diet is what they do with the dietitian. And then in terms of my role and Marissa's role, we work in health promotion, and we always say we will talk to anyone who will listen about this this type of information. So we are often collaborating with other organizations in the community, talking about eating disorders, raising awareness about what they are, and dispelling a lot of the myths that exist out there about eating disorders, because there is still quite a bit. A big bulk of what we do is in the schools. We have the pleasure of usually going into the schools and discussing body image, self-esteem, and balanced eating and joyful movement with young people. Now we're doing that all virtually. We also usually attend health fairs as well, and we will even go into workplaces and do training on things like weight bias and what it is to, live a joyful, healthy, happy life. And that can mean so many different things, broadening people's view on what health means. So we're really everywhere. We try to be, at least. And a lot of our outreach has been on social media this year, given the pandemic. You can go to the next one. Perfect. And we always say, with regards to when accessing care for eating disorders, everyone in our community kind of starts at BANA. We are the central point for the assessment. So no matter what your age is, you could call up BANA, and our intake worker would then have you in for an assessment if she deemed that that was necessary. And then depending on your age, we do have partnerships with different organizations, one being Teen Health Center and the other being the Regional Children's Center. So BANA actually provides treatment to clients who are 20 over, but if you were under 10, we would refer to RCC. And if you were within that teen range, usually about 10, 11 to 20, we would then refer you to Teen Health. But everyone starts at BANA. Many people are really surprised to find out that the average age of our client is 35.2. And that's just an indicator of how eating disorders really do impact everyone, right? They do not discriminate, no matter your background, age, gender. Anyone can be impacted by an eating disorder. Okay, so what is an eating disorder? It's likely that you have a little bit of knowledge already, because we hear bits and pieces about this in the media quite frequently. And also you may have even heard more information about eating disorders within the pandemic, because I know that we've seen a rise in some of these behaviors. The first thing we like to make clear is that eating disorders are mental illnesses. And that would mean they would be classified in similar category as something like anxiety, OCD, depression. So all of those illnesses have been diagnosed by a mental health professional, and has specific criteria that the professional looks at to diagnose an eating disorder. And there is a difference between an eating disorder and disordered eating, and Marissa's going to tell you a little bit more about that in the next slide. But eating disorders should be taken seriously and warrant mental health professional guidance and treatment. We always say it's such a sign of strength to go get help rather than a sign of weakness. sometimes individuals with eating disorders will feel that they're not sick enough or that it's not worthy of help. But we always say, you know, the best step is to reach out and talk to someone and find out. And it could be that, you know, you have that guidance and it isn't a full-blown eating disorder, but it's better that you did reach out and get the help. Many people are really surprised to find out that unfortunately eating disorders do have a very high mortality rate. And that is because some of the behaviors that people engage in when they have an eating disorder can be really risky to their overall health, and the body can only sustain that for so long. So it is unfortunate. It's another reason to get help earlier rather than later. Eating disorders have nothing to do really with the food itself, but rather it's that person's relationship with food. So the person is using food as a way to cope with something else going on in their life. And that could be an uncomfortable or painful emotion. It could be an experience that happened in their past. This is the way that they've learned to cope with that emotion or certain experience. Sometimes we do, to give it perspective and a little bit greater understanding, because it is kind of tricky to think about it, that it has nothing to do with food, since food is so highly involved. But someone with a dependency on alcohol or drugs, you know, it's pretty well known that they're using those substances in order to cope, right? They don't want to be doing this. So it's kind of similar with an eating disorder where they're using the food as their substance to cope. And they'll do this in a variety of unhealthy ways. And Marissa will get more into some of those behaviors. Generally, people with eating disorders have a negative body image or a distorted body image, as well as a low self-esteem. And they might have a lot of different feelings about their body and fear of gaining weight. Some of the more common eating disorders are on the screen here. We won't get into them today for the purpose of this presentation, but these are some of the more common ones that you may have heard of and that we see at BANA.
Okay, awesome. And I did unmute myself. Okay, so just to talk a little bit more about disordered eating, because sometimes we will hear that term, and it's a little bit different than an eating disorder. So disordered eating really is an unhealthy relationship with food, unhealthy eating behaviors. And we see that these behaviors really do occur on a spectrum. So on the far left side, I'd like to say if I could do like green, yellow, red, this would be the green area. You know, I have body acceptance. I like my body. I trust that it's, you know, I can fluctuate between 5 or 10 pounds. If I overeat one day, that's okay. You know, eating large amounts at family gatherings, that's really normal. If I go to a restaurant, usually I'm pretty flexible around food. I can find something that I would like to eat. So this is kind of like our green zone. And then when we go to the middle here, these are our disordered eating behaviors. So they're just really that unhealthy relationship with food. But what makes things really kind of sticky and gray is that many of these disordered eating behaviors are normalized in our society. As Michaela was saying, we have these thoughts and feelings in Western society about what healthy bodies should look like, what are healthy weights, or that thinness is associated with being healthy. And oftentimes we'll like to point out that many features of our modern diets are disordered. So things like restricting, extreme dieting, having this preoccupation with weight, food, or shape. Maybe you're measuring all of your food. Maybe you're measuring areas on your body or taking your weight every single day. Maybe you're striving for perfection or doing excessive exercise. Those things are not uncommon when we look at modern diets. And one of the big problems is that people will start doing this behavior, their body starts changing, and what do? We praise them for it. We see them and we say, oh my goodness, have you lost weight? You look so good. Or we say, oh my goodness, you're so good. I can't believe you can stick to this diet. I'm so bad, I can't stick to a diet. So we sort of attach it to our moral, you know, value or worth, or somehow like our willpower is tied to this, when in reality we know diets don't last in the long term. And there's so many other things that go into determining our weight, shape, and size other than our eating behaviors. But it's really hard, again, because of the society that we live in. And sometimes what we see is that people start doing these things very well-meaning on a diet, but then they kind of get lost in it, or maybe they have that poor body image, like Stephanie said, and they can get stuck maybe cycling through these diets or doing them to the extreme. And that's when we kind of do navigate towards that eating disorders, where people are meeting, criteria for having an eating disorder. All right.
Okay, so this is a topic we talk about a lot at BANA, body image. And just so we're all on the same page, when we describe body image to young people, we say it's how you see yourself. So when you look in the mirror, it's what you see, but it might not be what I see when I look at you, right? It could be very different. Sometimes young people will say, oh, it's just what you look like. But no, that's not quite it. That would be our appearance, right? We're all familiar with our appearance. You can see that externally very clearly. You might have comments a lot about your appearance as well. But your body image is very internal and specific to you. It's what you see specifically when you look in the mirror, your own thoughts, your own feelings about your body. So we always like to make that clear distinction between appearance and body image. And many of our clients at BANA have what's called a distorted body image. So when they look in the mirror, it's not quite accurate to what we see when we look at them. They might be hyper-focused on all of the negative, or as they perceive to be negative, about their body. And again, they might have that very intense fear of gaining weight or wanting to change the body in some way. It can differ between men and women, and I think society and media has a big role in determining what's the ideal for men and women as well. So when it applies to our clients, there's so much involved in the formation of someone's body image, right? So when speaking with one of our clinicians, it can involve a lot of digging deeper as to where that negative or distorted body image stemmed from. So it's not a quick fix. It's hard work when it comes to reestablishing a healthy body image, but that's what we aim to do with our clients.
Okay, and I'm keeping an eye on the time, so I'm going to try and go through this quickly. But we want to just kind of look at diet culture and through history, just a few of the things that that have been documented. And for a large part of our human existence, no one would have ever dreamed of restricting food intake to lose weight. And if you want to look at this from a social justice perspective, it's actually quite a privilege to go on some sort of cleanse or fast, because many people in the world would not even imagine doing that. And way back in history, fat on the body really did signal that higher social status. You had a better chance of weathering a famine and disease, and it was associated with greater fertility, whereas thinness was associated with poverty, illness, or death. We've also seen periods in history where there's been ideas around good food and bad food, or right or wrong ways of eating. And I think that's still present today. We always hear about junk food, bad food, good food. We really try not to use those labels at BANA and just call the food by its name. And even the word diet, it comes from ancient Greek. It means way of life, and it was seen in early medical writings as, corresponding to like a regime or a system of rules governing behavior. And just looking at, depictions of the body throughout history, and I know this is not very diverse, which I'm just realizing now. These are all female depictions in art, but we see, 25,000 BC, Venus of Willendorf, right at the top here. This was really a representation of an idealized female beauty at the time. And then fast forward to 100 BC, we have Venus de Milo. It's often thought that this is representing Aphrodite, which was the Greek goddess of sexual love and beauty. And I love that there's curves on these bodies. That's really nice to see. And then fast forwarding a lot more to 1635, we see this painting here, The Three Graces, depicting these women, curvy. It says fuller figure bodies. I just think they're different bodies. Okay. And then when we kind of look at the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, we have lots of immigrants coming to US and Canada. And we also see that there's, with industrialization, mass food production. So people are not as concerned about, hunting, gathering, growing their own food. Food is becoming readily available. And what we also see, from that social justice perspective, the middle class or even upper class Americans looking for a way to assert dominance over the new immigrants coming in. And body size was a key point of comparison. So really, they wanted to assert themselves as with a thinner body, signifying a higher status in society and being in that upper class. We also saw standard sizes coming. So before, the 1800s, clothes were made to fit your body. You didn't have to fit into a small, medium, large, extra large. So cueing the comparisons, right? What's your size? Or maybe when you go into a store, are you going to find something that fits your body and that you like the way it looks on your body? And again, moving into more modern times, the early 1900s, we see the medical field starting to get on board with weight loss. Even though we don't have a lot of good evidence equating weight with overall health, there's a lot of factors that go into health. And we also see that's a lot rooted in weight bias. So that idea that a smaller body is a healthier body, which we know is simply not true. And also, when we look at the media, a lot of patients coming in to doctors asking for weight loss. So it was a lot of pressure from society, from the patients coming in, for doctors really to give the patients what they wanted. And I just want to mention here, we have these depiction here. This was the Gibson girl, and this was appeared in a magazine, sort of around the 1900s there. And what's interesting is that people wanted to look like her, even though she's a drawing. So it's like, this isn't even a real person. But at the time, corsets were still really in fashion. And so we see these broad shoulders, very busty, small waist, very unattainable, and then that voluminous hip. And it was funny because at the time she was seen as being very progressive. They would draw pictures of her riding a bike or playing tennis, which a lot of women didn't do at the time. But, it's in contrast to kind of ironic that she was being so progressive in some ways, and yet people still wanted to attain this unattainable body that was being drawn. So we like to say they're kind of like the first Kardashians. Okay, this here we just took from social media, and it's really examples of diet culture, and we could do a whole hour on this alone. But once you kind of see diet culture showing up in your life, it's really hard to unsee, and you're going to start to question it a little bit more. But we're seeing all of these things happening, right? Complimenting on weight loss, even though we don't know what the means somebody went to achieve that body weight, shape, size. Having a lot of anxiety around food or ignoring our body's cues. My body's telling me I'm hungry, but I'm gonna do something crazy I saw on social media to try and get rid of that craving. Eliminating food groups, so telling ourselves certain foods are bad or off limits. Our motto at Banna is that all food fits, having everything in moderation. That includes having treats sometimes, that brings us a lot of pleasure. And we share food with friends. Food is a social activity. So again, I'm not going to go over all of these, just thinking about time, but if you do care to, there's lots of really great accounts out there that are very positive and kind of speak out against diet culture. Okay, and I think this one is me. Okay, so for how to tell if somebody has an eating disorder, just want to really acknowledge that they are often difficult to spot. As Stephanie said, people often do these behaviors to help to cope with something going on in their life. So in some ways, it is helping them. Sometimes we say, this eating disorder has helped you survive. But you're here, and we're very happy you've come to BANA, and you're going to get help and find other coping mechanisms for these things that are going on. Many people are, quote unquote average weight that come into BANA, so it's not easy to tell just by looking at them. We know stigma and fear delay people from coming to get help, but we really want to let people know that seeking out help is a huge sign of strength and not a sign of weakness. We know that for men, there is the additional stigma, oftentimes this being perceived as a women's issue, or perhaps they're going to their doctor and describing symptoms, and an eating disorder just isn't the first thing that comes to that medical professional's mind, again, because of stereotypes. So that's why we do what we do. We're trying to break down those stereotypes, help people realize that eating disorders don't discriminate. They can happen to anyone. And again, seeking out help is a huge sign of strength. Okay.
Okay, so just as we're getting to the end here, you might think, I have someone in my life, how can I help them? Or if you suspect that they might have an eating disorder, this is such a common question that we get. So the first step you've kind of already done today, educating yourself, learning more about eating disorders and the different ways that they present. And you can visit our website, which is bana.ca, to get additional information. We also have listed there NEDIC.ca, and I'll tell you more about NEDIC, but that's the National Eating Disorder Information Center. And then the nationaleatingdisorders.org is another reputable site. So getting as much information as you can, given that there is such misinformation within our society, just kind of put out there, that's a great first step. We often say, show support and provide support without judgment, and don't go beyond your own limits. So the best thing you can do is to stick to being a friend, really. If someone wants to talk about it, be there for them. If they're not ready to talk about it, it's probably best to just say, I'm here when you need me to go deeper with you. It could be simply saying, I'll be there if you want me to go to the first appointment with you. I learned about BANA in this presentation. I think it'd be really cool if we looked at the website together. Small steps like that, and really just being that supportive friend there without judgment, without trying to fix the problem, because that's not your role as a friend. It's rather being there to support in the best way that you can. Sometimes if we push too hard, that person will not want to share with you as much. So there's a big element of readiness when it comes to gaining assistance, or even accepting that you might have an eating disorder. So just being that supportive friend is a great thing that you can do to help someone. And remembering that change absolutely will take time, being patient, and using language like, I am worried about you rather than you are worrying me. So kind of not placing so much blame on that person, but just expressing how you feel in that more neutral way. Okay, so that is our toll-free number as well there on the screen. That's a number that you could call if you did have additional questions, even if you were that supportive friend and you wanted to learn a little bit more, ask a few questions. It's not a crisis line, so it's only answered during our business hours, but there is a confidential voicemail. It's also anonymous, so you wouldn't have to give your name if you were calling and you were concerned about yourself. You could just ask a few questions. And if you did want to come in for an appointment, that's when you would have to share your information on your health card. But it's a great resource for you there. And then we'll go to the next slide, Marissa. I'll just tell them, the last one. I'll tell them about NEDIC, which I also mentioned. They have a chat line on their website. It's also not crisis or 24-hour. There's specific hours on their website. And it's also anonymous, so you could get greater guidance from someone on the other end. It's not a robot, but they could direct you to either another professional in our community or additional resources that you might need. And then we also put there Together All, which is a peer-to-peer support group online. So it used to be called the Big White Wall, I believe, but now they've changed their name. And that's another online resource that you could access if you were struggling. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our portion. If there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute. And I apologize that I had to come off camera. I was still getting delays when I came back on. Thanks for listening and educating yourself on this topic.
Thank you very much, Marissa and Stephanie. That was super educational and very entertaining at the same time. It was a perfect mix. And you're both very eloquent presenters. So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Michaela.
Oh, my pleasure. So I will now go on to the art portion of the tour. If anyone has any questions for Bana afterwards, you can either forward them to me and then I will forward them on. You can type them in the chat. We understand if you want to remain anonymous and not ask questions directly right now, you can message me directly. There's the option to do that in the chat. But also there were the Bana contacts in there. If you felt after the presentation that you had a question about anything that you saw, or you know, even if it was anything on my end with the art portion that's coming up next, if there's anything that concerned you or that you have more questions about, you can get in touch with me about that. Thank you, Marissa, for dropping that in the chat. So you can't copy and paste from Zoom chats for some reason, but that's a really short email. So you just quickly type that in and should be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to begin the presentation. And please, Bana, feel free to comment on the art if you want to as well. Yeah, no limits here. Guests, staff, presenters, everyone can comment if they want to. All right, so here we go. So first we're looking at a couple of self-portraits by John Alfson. About 30 years apart, you can see that the one on the left is from 1936 and the one on the right is from 1965. So John Alfson was kind of a local artist. He was born in Michigan, but he ended up moving to Toronto, and his main mediums were oil, chalk, and pastel, but he was also a sculptor. And he was mostly a figurative artist, and this means that he preferred to portray the human figure or objects, animals, as opposed to things like, say, the landscape. Quite often in our contemporary society, people take pictures of themselves at a certain angle or only in a certain lighting, and that's the only way that they're willing to show an image of themselves to the rest of the world. As you can see here, Alfson didn't take this image of himself. He didn't sketch this image or either of these images of himself from like an ideal angle or lighting. He sketched as if you're just sitting across from him having a conversation with him at eye level with him there. And it's interesting that he also wasn't afraid to document his aging process as he did this and to keep a neutral facial expression instead of trying to, you know, many people I've noticed will, you know, smiling, of course, everyone loves to see a smile, but some people will also try to form expressions on their faces that they believe complement their facial features. And he just kind of let his face be at rest, which is nice. So these decisions are obviously very deliberate because sketching oneself takes a longer time, much longer time than snapping a selfie and then uploading that to social media. So these were all very conscious decisions on his part. He had time to think about how he would show his face to the world in an immortalized way, and he chose to capture his face as it naturally is. So that makes his portraits really refreshing and accessible. And there's no sort of element of comparison in there that he was trying to look better than someone or show to his viewer, you know, a certain presentation of himself that made him look, you know, especially handsome or anything like that. He was just him. And as a note on the material there, as you can see at the top, the earlier sketch is graphite on paper. So that's graphite is pencil lead. Conte is slightly different. It's graphite or charcoal mixed with clay. And it kind of, you make like a little bit of a crayon or a colored pencil out of that. And that's what he used for his later drawing. So for anyone who didn't know about those materials. So yeah, we like to do our discussions of these these pieces as we go along rather than waiting for them to all pile up at the end, right? So if you want to say something about this one right now, if there's any observations that anyone has or any questions about either of these pieces here. By the way, if you see the rectangle with everyone's faces along the side, you can drag that down to the bottom to make viewing easier for yourselves. Derrick says, I was not familiar with what Conte was. Thank you for sharing that information, Michaela. Yeah, I try to, whenever the material is kind of obscure, like I don't come from an arts background myself. So if I know the material, like for example, oil on canvas, that's oil paints on, everyone knows what a canvas is, right? But if it's more obscure, yeah, I definitely want to share the arts aspect of this, right? It's not just the body acceptance, but also we have to look at the art and the aesthetic of it as well. So yeah, I also love the different colors on the second self-portrait, Derrick says. Oh yeah, you can see the light gray sepia or brown tone with the gray. Yeah, the other one was kind of monotone, like he used color by pressing harder on the pencil that he was using to sketch, and that's how he got the variance of colors in the first one. But in the second one, yeah, it definitely has that sepia tone with the browns and the grays and the darker, like around the pupils, he pressed hard enough to make it look black. Yeah, definitely some cool differences there. Conte is a bit of a more diverse material. It's allowing for a greater range of colors. Marissa says, it's interesting how there are fewer pencil strokes in the second, but I find it more lifelike. Sort of like less is more. Yeah, that's an interesting observation for sure, Marissa. Like he didn't shade in the shadows of his face as much. I think there's something in his eyes that makes it look more lifelike, like he's looking at you more directly, whereas the other one, he's sort of looking down a little bit. His gaze is pointed downward. Yeah, there seems to be a light in his eyes in the second one. I can I can see that too. And I like how even he documented the receding hairline too. Very, very detailed. Interesting to see how the shape of the face and the shapes of the features kind of change with age.
I really like the context that you gave on this, Michaela. And yeah, I've seen these before, but it's really, yeah, it's really poignant of how like he's just sort of putting himself out there as he was and not feeling any barriers to doing that, because you're totally right in that we like so much of what we see of others like very carefully curated, even though it looks natural. But like these are wonderful works. So yeah, thank you for including these.
Thank you for your insights, Abby Lee. Yeah, I'm glad that I can include them. And another part of why I wanted to include them was, yeah, Marissa says perhaps being more comfortable in his skin as he ages. That's another good point too. I know a lot of older people who have expressed that, like, I'm such and such this many decades old, I can say and do whatever I want now. And that's really empowering in a way. And also I know that society kind of has like this fear of aging too, and it doesn't just come from the fear of, eventually passing away. It's they're afraid of what happens to their bodies as they get older. And there's a lot of anti-aging products out there and other things like facelifts, and people, it's part of the non-ideal body, or the ideal body is a younger one. The ideal body in our Western society is very young and thin, and it's kind of ageist to portray that idea that old people shouldn't be seen, or that their features need to be changed in any way, which is simply not true, because the faces with the lines and the wrinkles in them from their years of laughter, of showing emotion on their faces, that has its own kind of beauty that we should see more of, I think. Abby Lee says, OMG, de-aging cream commercials make me rant like nothing else. Yes, and they always have women who are like my age in these commercials, like trying to get rid of what imaginary wrinkles, or like, yeah, I wonder, that's part of like what I was talking about earlier with how lucrative these concepts are. Like, push these concepts, people will buy your products because they want to look a certain way, of course. Derrick says the growing lines adding to the masterpiece that is you. Yes, the lines of your faces, that it's like a unique map of your life and emotions that have kind of etched their way into your faces. Yeah, if you have lines on your faces, it means that you laughed a lot. Maybe that you frowned a lot too, but that just means that you had experiences that made you feel those things. I'm just going to give you a closer look quickly at both of these images. The rectangle of the screen kind of gives a little bit of a limited perspective there, so I'm trying to angle this as best as possible here. The top of the head, I think it's just interesting, the variety of different pencil strokes that you can see here. Very fine ones around his cheekbones, much darker ones around his sideburns and to indicate his strands of hair. He even gets like the small details like the bags around his eyes. They're not exactly bags, but just like the little smidgen there around the lower lid, very detailed. Nice work there with the shadow and indentations of the face. Yes, absolutely. All the contours of the face are indicated in here, like the subtle ones like here around the eye. This would be more where the bags of the eyes would be. The hollow of the cheekbones, around the edge of the nose. It's very, very detailed. And then if we go to the next one, we can see there's one eye, but I wanted to focus on the lower half of the face in this one since we focused on the upper half of the face in the other one. But yeah, interesting strokes here too with the Conte. Once again, very fine. And then darker to indicate, you know, like shadow. And you know, the more defined planes of the face, so like where the nose is and the mouth, obviously. Yeah, very talented. I don't know if we have any sculptures or anything like that in our collection by him, but I imagine that if he's a talented sketcher like this, he's also a talented sculptor. All right, let's look at the next piece of art. This one is by Francisco Zúñiga. I think I pronounced it correctly. So he was both a painter and a sculptor, and he combined his classical training with Aztec forms. And his favorite subjects to depict were the women of his native Mexico and Central America. And he believed that these women represented maternity and familial responsibility. And he depicted their bodies in an honest way and portrayed them in natural, commonplace situations. Like you can see the figure farthest right there. She's got a little kid clinging to her or hugging her. And still, as you can see, even though these women are portrayed in an honest, commonplace kind of way, the forms are very simplified. There isn't like a huge amount of detail to them. And it's like as if to capture their essence rather than, you know, their every single detail in its entirety. These women haven't been placed in poses for the visual pleasure of others, nor have their bodies been modified to suit a narrow Western ideal of what a woman's body should look like. I just find that oftentimes in the mass media, like on magazine covers, of course they're photoshopped, you know, a lot of the time, and the women are posed in certain ways too that emphasizes their sexuality. And not that there's anything wrong, of course, with anyone's sexuality, but I feel like there's often undue or disproportionate emphasis on that aspect of the body. And this is just not the case in this sculpture right here. They've been powerfully rendered by the artist just as they are, living their everyday lives. And in this way, Zúñiga subverts the artistic convention of objectifying women and instead gives humanity and agency back to these women and their bodies. We got some stuff in the chat here. Marissa says, my eye immediately went to the child hugging her legs. I know, it's funny how I think it's because she's the only one who has a kid around her legs there. It makes it easier to see. Derrick says, I like that it looks like they are pondering, each looking up and thinking. Agreed, especially the person with the hand on her chin like that. And then we've got another woman. The one on the far left seems to have her back turned to the viewer. So really this sculpture, especially this woman in profile here, the third one from the left, You could view this sculpture from multiple angles, I guess, because they're all kind of facing different ways there. I'll give us a closer look actually at some aspects. So you can see a little bit more of their faces, the details in the bronze there of like the kind of the scratchy looks, or the it almost looks wrinkled in the sense, not like that their skin is supposed to look wrinkled, but that the material is just kind of wrinkling in the making. Abby Lee says they look like they have kind of a secret that we would want to know, or that we should want to know. Maybe the secret is that body acceptance is beautiful. I love it. That, you know what, that shouldn't be a secret. That should be something that everybody knows. Absolutely everybody. Thank you, Abby Lee. Yeah, I like that they look very peaceful though too. They're living their lives. They're living their best lives. And maybe the one on the right is thinking, oh my God, this kid won't shut up or something like that. Just like not having a concern about her body, but just like about her life, her everyday life. Maybe the kid is a sweetheart. I don't know. I'm just judging. He might not be whining about anything at all. Could just be giving his mom a hug. All right, anything else before we move on to the next piece? Okay, we'll go ahead. This one's really interesting here. This is The Swinger by Roland Brenner. The Swinger, mauve. I don't know why mauve. It doesn't really look like mauve to me, at least not in this shot. But Roland Brenner is a South African Canadian artist whose hope is that his art expresses a feeling of common humanity towards others. His work is influenced by multiple art forms, hobbies, and cultures. And this piece, I personally think, looks a little bit cartoonish rather than realistic, because no one has the combination of features of a throat bigger than their head, and arms smaller than their head, and legs that are bulky, way bulky on the upper thigh, but then very abruptly shrink in and become small. Yet despite this combination of features, the piece is called The Swinger. The title is focused on the action of the figure rather than its features, and the figure isn't defined by what they look like. I don't know about everyone else, but personally, I find it really empowering when society doesn't put an image up there of somebody, like usually a celebrity after she's had a baby, or so-and-so after a lot of weight loss or plastic surgery or Botox or whatever it is. They just like to pick apart these people and how their appearances have or haven't changed, and whether or not that's good or bad. What I find empowering is when they put someone up there, an image of somebody, and they don't say a thing about their appearance. They just talk about what it is that that person does, or something that they have done that's special recently. And most people would probably choose to say, or choose to define themselves more based on what they do and say than about what they look like. So I think that's commendable that Roland Brenner, despite taking his materials and making such an interesting combination of features in this individual, he still put the emphasis on the swinging. To talk about the material for a sec, polyester resin, for anyone who doesn't know, is just a synthetic liquid that dries, that hardens when it dries. So hardens well enough to make a statue. And I did see this guy. He's since been taken down, but he was up at the gallery, and I saw him during one of those brief moments when we were not in lockdown. And it's amazing because he actually does swing a little bit. The weight of him, like the way that I'm not sure what those are. I don't want to say ropes, but it's holding him up, and you don't want to stand underneath them because it makes you think like, what if those break and then it falls on me or something. But yeah, the swinger does have motion to him as well. So that's pretty cool. A lot of comments in the chat here. I think it's maybe mauve because of the person's hands and feet being kind of purple, says Derrick. Okay, yeah, towards the bottom, I can definitely see that. His hands are hanging on so tight they've turned purple. It looks like they got into something that dyed their hands and feet. It's so interesting to see this figure rendered in a way to show both the pushing back and pulling forward that happens when we swing. Definitely, yeah. I see that a lot in the arms, the way, you know, like you kind of unconsciously do it. Something, and we all learn it as kids, right? And then you pump the legs. His legs aren't like straight together though, so maybe he's just kind of like leisurely swinging instead of having one of those contests with people like how high can you go? I can jump off the swing higher than you, that kind of thing. Dangerous. Okay. Marissa says, links the person to something they are doing and not what they look like. Yeah, exactly. Abby Lee says, this person just looks like they're having a blast. I love it. They do. I'm going to show you the close-up of the next slide, and I'm going to tell you, okay. So dyed their hands and feet. Oh yeah, dyed. I just realized it too, that dyed, he had spelt it as like croaked, but yeah, dyed as in, yeah, actual dye. Marissa says, I totally agree, Michaela. Let's focus on inner qualities and behaviors and not on weight and shape. Exactly. No matter what that weight and shape is, or even, you know, like if it's something outside of how weight affects shape at all, just, you know, features in general, the features that you naturally have, be happy with them because they are unique and they are you, and nobody else looks exactly like you in the world, even though there's, you know, rumors that we all have a secret twin out there. I don't know if I believe those. But okay, so this next slide here, okay, Abby Lee, and in response to what you were saying about how he looks like he's having a blast, so that smile reminds me of the Me Gusta meme, you know, where the guy's like, right, and then, you know, you put that face under whatever it is that you like to emphasize that you like it. This guy's like Me Gusta swinging. That's what it reminds me of.
That's adorable.
I know, right? Look at how broad that smile is. It's like it literally stretches across his entire face. So funny. Okay. So now, okay, this one might be one of my personal favorites. I use it again and again in a lot of different events, but it's Prudence Heward's Femme au bord de la mer. And Prudence was a painter from Montreal in the first half of the 20th century. She was a member of many well-known Canadian artist groups, and she worked during a time when women artists really had to fight to have their works recognized and appreciated. So that in and of itself, makes her a bit of a feminist icon. But to me, what's even more important is that she was not afraid to portray women's subjects in an unidealized manner. She didn't paint her women to look all docile and content and slender, as many people, especially like within the context of the patriarchy, prefer to see women. She gave them the range of body types and facial expressions that were true to their appearances and their feelings. So in this painting, as you can see, the woman does not look happy. She isn't pretending or forcing a smile to make anyone else more comfortable with her presence. And also this painting, as you can see, is from 1930. So that's the tail end of the flapper era. And with flappers, the ideal body type was a very thin, waif-like body. So the woman in the painting does not embody that conventionally attractive figure of that time frame. She has a stockier, sturdier build to her, and she isn't ashamed of her body, clearly, because she's wearing a bathing suit, and she's got her legs kind of butterflying open. And this was also during a time when women were told that they should be modest and cover up. And I realized that flappers weren't exactly known for being modest, but that's just another part of the unfortunate paradoxical messages that women have always been kind of receiving about their bodies. Like, you have to be sexy, but at the same time, you shouldn't be shy and cover it up, leave some stuff to the imagination. So no matter what, with that kind of narrative where it's both at once, you just can't win. And there's always been a lot of narrative around, you know, women who aren't thin especially need to cover up. So we just need to take all these ideas about what a woman should or shouldn't do with her body, how she should or shouldn't dress for her body. And we just need to throw those ideas in the trash. And you just need to, you know, think about what works best for you, what makes you most comfortable. So Heward spurns the conventions of how the female body should perform to make others feel comfortable. And let's take that with us and remember just that from whatever we're wearing, from the expressions on our faces to our outfits, what's most important is that we feel comfortable in our own skin. And ultimately, we're the ones living in our bodies, not anybody else. So we should determine what is best for those bodies. All right, let's see. Chat. I want to quote that on I want that quote on a t-shirt, Michaela, says Abby Lee. Take those ideas and throw them in the trash. If the ideas make you feel like trash, then they need to be thrown in the trash, right? That's the whole thing. No toxic mentalities here. Stephanie, this would have been such a powerful stance against the norm, given the time she completed this. Yes, this painting at the time made a lot of people super uncomfortable. And personally, if I were Prudence, I'd have been like, yes, that is what I am here for. I am living for that. Agreed, creating conversation, says Marissa. Exactly. Yeah, a lot of Prudence Herod's works depicting women. She also did other things like landscapes or cityscapes, but whenever she painted women, it made people distinctly uncomfortable. Because she didn't do so in a way that was conventional. No one else at her time was doing this same thing. So she really was quite the rebel of her time. I'll give you a closer look at this person's facial expression. Yeah, so as you can see, what would we call that now? Resting, I don't want to say a swear word, resting face, you know which face I mean, but you know what, who cares, right? Like you want to relax your face, just relax your face. You don't need to be putting on a smile for anybody. Like she looks not unhappy either. She looks like she's just fine the way she is, just very natural there. I do like that there's a nod to the times in terms of the hairstyle, though. That's interesting, that kind of waved short look. Content, Derrick says. Yes, she looks content and at peace. All right, next piece. I love this one. Okay, so this is untitled, in brackets, Smoking Robot Woman. I don't know why this is untitled. He should have just called it Smoking Robot Woman if he had it in brackets afterwards anyway. But this is a piece by Marcel Zama. So this is a Canadian artist here whose work has been described as whimsical, absurd, surreal, and fairy tale-like. He likes it when art has a sense of humor, and his art certainly does. I chose this image because the bust portion is like a very conventionally attractive young woman, you know, slender, blonde, wearing makeup. But then the rest of her is kind of like a cylindrical robot with tiny legs, and then she's got arms with pinchers at the end for hands. And does she look like she's unhappy about it though? Let's look at the next slide, a closer up. It's a pixelated version, but does this look like an unhappy person to you? Does not look like an unhappy person to me. She looks like she's really quite tranquil, just doing her own thing. The only issue I take with this image is that she looks very happy as she's smoking, which smoking has been proven to be unhealthy. So that, you know, she needs to find a different thing. I'm sorry. But in the meantime, the point is that she is at peace with her body, despite the fact that many would consider it to be grotesque, because a robot should have a metal head and a woman should have a flesh and blood body, right? But not necessarily, because other people, whether they're individuals or society as a whole, they don't get to determine what anyone else's body should look like in any capacity. So it's every person's prerogative, it's every person's right to decide for themselves what they should look like, what makes them feel good in their own skin, no matter what that looks like on the outside to everybody else. It's back to that same thing I was saying with Prudence Heward. Whatever makes you feel good in your body because you're the one living in it, that's what you need to do. All right, let's look at the chat. Abby Lee, she's living her best life, isn't she? That robot woman, says Derrick, is enjoying her smoke with a capital S. It does look like a very fancy, like Cruella de Vil cigarette there. Stephanie says maybe she's happy no one can judge her by looking solely at her body. A little bit of freedom, yeah, exactly. And Marissa says, I was just thinking the same thing. Steph smoking and almost saying, get used to it. Yeah, like deal with it, like with the meme with the sunglasses coming down, only she's got a cigarette instead. She looks very confident. I wish the same kind of confidence for everyone that this woman has with her body and just with her existence in general, the way she's going about her life right now. Abby Lee says, yes, she's like, try and stop me. You know what? She's got a robot body, so she's, you know, like the Terminator, probably more powerful than a normal person would be anyway, so no one could stop her even if they physically tried to. I love it. And I think she's killing it with the lipstick there. That's a great shade. All right. So next we have a piece carved from whalebone. And I should note for anyone who might be concerned that this artist doesn't kill whales for his art. He takes the bones from whales that are already dead to make his carvings. So this is a contemporary Inuit artist named Manasaya Akpaliapik. So Akpaliapik comes from a family of artists, and he grew up carving blocks of ice with a knife. He would carve figures from the stories his grandparents would tell him. And this is from one such story here. This is a sculpture of the Inuit sea goddess Sedna. So first I have to preface what I'm about to say by emphasizing that, the story that I see here, the body positivity story that I see as a Westerner in Sedna's story, is not the story's purpose. So Sedna is one of the most important figures in Inuit mythos, and her story is part of the oral tradition of the Inuit that's been passed down for thousands upon thousands of years, untold generations, and she has sacred meaning to the Inuit. I have no claim to Sedna or her story, nor does anyone but the Inuit. However, since her story can be found widely online, I think it's okay to assume that the Inuit are okay with this traditional knowledge being widely shared. So I'm going to tell you that when I first read Sedna's story, I found it very poignant. And there are a lot of variations on it, but typically it goes something like this. So Sedna enters an interspecies, a very taboo, of course, interspecies marriage. And her father either tries to rescue her from it or punish her for it. And over the course of this, they end up in a boat in the middle of the ocean, and the sea is starting to rage and become frothy, and her father's afraid that the boat is going to be tipped over and that they're both going to drown. He thinks that the sea is angry, so he essentially throws Sedna overboard to kind of placate the sea. And she's clinging for dear life to the boat, so he cuts off her fingers so that she has nothing to cling to, or nothing to cling with, rather. Sometimes he cuts off her hands too. Sometimes he cuts off up to her forearms, so she really can't get a grip. And then with nothing left to hold on to the boat with, Sedna ends up falling into the sea and becoming kind of a half fish person. She sinks to the bottom of the ocean and she grows a tail in place of her legs, and the body parts that had been cut off of her fingers, her hands, they end up becoming sea creatures like whales, seals, walruses, and polar bears. And Sedna becomes the mother of all sea creatures, and she alone has dominion over them. Her story is tragic, but it can also be seen as empowering. From her trauma, Sedna ended up in a position of power and freedom where no one could decide for her how she should live her life. Even without her fingers, her hands, or her forearms, or whatever was taken from her, Sedna's new body functions exactly as it needs to for her role as a sea goddess. Her body is still powerful. So you can see from this particular sculpture that Sedna still has one hand. So that might be one variation on the story where it only happened to her one hand that got cut off. I imagine if the sea is raging and your dad is working against you, it's very difficult to cling to a boat with only one hand. So I could see her sinking even if she had the one hand left. Yeah, so I think it's important to remember that when our body functions in the way that we want it to, when it serves our needs as human beings and, for survival and for leisure, that's all we can really ask of it, right? That's all that's really important about the body. It's not a source of entertainment for other people or something for other people to view. It's something for our minds and our souls to live in on this material earth. So let's see the chat here. Derrick says, this is a very beautiful artwork. Thank you for sharing the context and also how it inspired you. Thank you, Derrick. Yeah, I didn't want to appropriate an Inuit story without first contextualizing that, the point of the story isn't body positivity. It's kind of an origin legend. I wanted to make sure that that was acknowledged. But I think it's interesting that coming at it from different angles, people from different cultures can see things in other people's cultures. They can see different meanings, different stories. I think stories are all kind of like that, where you can see multiple threads in one narrative, depending on, it's informed by your own life experience too. So I think we should feel free to interpret things in many ways, even if it's not like the original. We're all, it's okay if you see things a little bit differently, as long as you also keep in mind the meaning that the culture that the story came from. You should keep in mind their original meaning too, of course. Marissa says, great perspective that our bodies have functions and all bodies are good bodies. We all have something to contribute in each unique environment. That's very true. Different range of abilities. And I'm not just talking in terms of disability, but every person's body has a different range of movement, a different capacity for different activities. And we all kind of fit together in this puzzle that is our world, where all these different puzzle pieces filling in each other's gaps. And relying on each other and each other's different abilities and perspectives to, kind of complete each other in a sense. I hope I don't sound too sappy. I really do believe these things, though. I don't care how cheesy it sounds. Okay, let's give you a closer look at Sedna here. Let's look at her face. I don't know if that's her hair or she's wearing a hat. Could go either way. I like sappiness, says Abby Lee. And I love the cheese, says Stephanie. It has truth in it. Yes. Things that people declare to be cheesy, I think that people are afraid of feeling vulnerable to those emotions. So they kind of need to say, oh, that's cheesy, just to, lessen the intensity. Like, this makes me feel things. I don't want to feel things. I'm going to call this cheesy. Oh, I think everyone has like a secret cheesy side. Yes, agreed, Stephanie says. Yes. Cheese is fun. Embrace the cheese. This is, I think it's really cool when you look up close, you could see how porous the whalebone is. It must be a super difficult material to carve. Wood in its own way is kind of malleable. And then I've always been in awe of people who who sculpted stone. But bone that's just like a different property altogether. This is almost bio art in a way. Like, yes, this thing is dead now, but this comes from organic, like living material. I guess you could say that about wood sculptures too, though, trees. I had cheese for lunch, said Derrick. Thank you, Derrick. That's good. Good to know that you're full of cheese as well. The texture is beautiful, Derrick also says. It is, isn't it? You could even say that like the porousness of the sculpture also imitates human pores, like the little holes in our skin that allow our skin to breathe. That's nice detail there too. Yeah, she's got her mouth open too, as if to say something to us. It's really cool whalebone sculpture. We've got a few whalebone sculptures in our collection. That is what I was admiring, Derrick says. Yes. Yeah, if anyone wants to check out any stuff in our collection, if you go to agw.ca/search, you can see like by artist name, by the time period it was made in, by the subject matter, by the material it was made with. Yeah, you could view the other whalebone sculptures in our collection. Really cool stuff. All right, we come to our final piece now. So we're going back in time quite a bit with this artist. All the others had been from either the 20th or 21st century, but this is way back in 1684. So Sir Godfrey Kneller was the leading portrait painter in England from the late 17th to the early 18th centuries, and he was the court painter to the English and the British monarchs at the time. The figure portrayed in this image, Louise de Cutaway, Duchess of Portsmouth, was widely regarded to be very beautiful, and there was even speculation that she was planted by the French court to secure the affections of the English king, with the understanding that she would act in the best interests of her country. And she did secure the king's affections, and who knows what she secured for France in the process there. But if you look at her, you'll see that she doesn't have the kind of figure that today's Western society would consider to be ideal. She's got ample curving forearms. She has a full face. She has an upper body that doesn't display any collar or shoulder bones beneath her skin. So it just goes to show that ideals of beauty shift not just from century to century, but decade to decade and even year to year sometimes. And it kind of shows you how arbitrary beauty standards really are, because there is no single standard definition of beauty. and multiple body types are attractive to many different people throughout the world. So that, it just goes to show that every body really is a good body and is a beautiful body. Um, everyone, everyone's body should be accepted, not just by themselves, but by others. We should all accept and see the beauty in each other's bodies just for the fact that they're here, they're alive. There's a person, that lives inside of that body, and that they have things to say and things to do. There's a lot that can be said about that. Okay, so the chat, love the dress, says Abby Lee. Yes, the off the shoulder, the dark green. I do like dark green, very nice and foresty. What a life lived, says Derrick. Yeah. Oh, if only we knew more about her, right? Imagine this one person here was influencing the politics of the time of the two most powerful countries of the world at the time. Well, two of them, not maybe the two most, but yeah, France and the UK were definitely up there at the time. Marissa says, also the skin tone, lack of tan would be seen as holding higher status, meaning they did not work outdoors in fields and farms. And Derrick says, yes, yeah, exactly. That was a good sign of wealth and therefore health. And nowadays, that's, pasty skin is not like, that's once again not part of the ideal, but we want everyone to have like at least a nice light tan because that shows healthy sun exposure and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Marissa says funny because a tan is seen as a healthy glow now. Exactly. But in reality, everyone's just, they've got the skin tone they were born with. Just a lot of times based on the part of the world that they're from or that they've been living in, and the effects of the sunlight filtering through the clouds and the weather in different parts of the world. That's really all it's down to in terms of skin tone. And of course, yeah, like people staying inside more often will be paler. But yeah, it's just another one of those things, fickle things about beauty is the idea that there's a certain skin tone that's to be admired because it represents something. But yeah, a little bit of a closer up here of her face. You can kind of see it looks like her eyes match her dress, so that's on fleek, right? She's wearing maybe a little bit of cosmetics too. Can you imagine if she actually had to sit in that exact position while someone painted her? It doesn't look like the most comfy position if we go back. Apparently not. Okay, so since I no longer know how to use PowerPoint, I'll just go back to the, can I back arrow? There I go. Okay, that's what I was trying to show you. The uncomfortable position of holding the arms like that for so long. But yeah, Abby Lee says, I saw something that Abby Lee was saying something here. I'm not sure of the time period of this. I'm thinking around 17 to 1800s, if I remember. Yeah, late 1600s. The green was a common paint color for officers' mess rooms. It was considered a very powerful masculine color. Interesting that she is wearing a dark green dress. Yeah, maybe that alludes to her status. Maybe that shows some sort of power. Maybe this was at a point in time where she had already secured the king's affections, and that's kind of like a symbol of that. It's an interesting idea. Thank you for that. Everyone's sharing such great tidbits of like history and little knowledge trivia bits. So thank you for that. Marissa says maybe before her time or a way to gain attention. That's true. Look at me. I'm not wearing the colors that I'm supposed to wear. There's another supposed to in terms of appearance, right? Yeah, there's a lot that can be picked apart in every single one of these pieces, and we could just probably go on forever. But now I'm gonna I'm gonna go to the next couple slides that you've already seen. And now for a guided meditation by Derrick Carl Biso, Special Initiatives Coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor. So I'm gonna let them take over and lead us in a very body-focused, compassionate, mindful meditation for a few minutes. And that'll be kind of our end to the presentation and some final remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michaela, for welcoming me to be a part of kind of closing off our time together with a bit of a meditation. I've prepared something special today, and I actually have one slide. Could I share my screen to share the one slide I have? I press, there we are. So it's just one slide and it's just with a few different words on it. And what I actually prepared today is a bit more focus on our relationship to our thoughts and to ourselves. And so I'd like to kind of cultivate with us today some mindful awareness and some loving kindness towards ourselves. I just want to see everybody again. Oh, I've lost everyone. Okay, that's okay. Oh, it's because I hid you all. Anyway, there, I'm getting better situated. And then I need my notes. Sorry, I really got into the tour, obviously, and was enjoying myself a bit too much. But that I wanted to share with you all today a little bit of loving kindness. And this is borrowed heavily from the work of a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. And there's a book in particular that I'm going to mention where some of this information comes from that's titled No Mud, No Lotus, The Art of Transforming Suffering. And for those who are not familiar, Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King and has continued his long life advocating for peaceful social action. It's someone who really inspired me to get into mindfulness and practice mindfulness regularly. And the meditation I have today is about cultivating understanding, love, and compassion by first looking at ourselves deeply and then doing the same for others. As we are able to love and take care of ourselves, we can be a lot more helpful to others around us. And we're going to start practicing our loving kindness with this aspiration, may I be. And as we practice and we look deeply, we're going to notice more about our being, which is our bodies and also our feelings and our perceptions, all our mental formations and our thoughts. It's kind of all of our consciousness. And I wanted to share these exact words with you because if you would like, I want to welcome you to start doing this a bit more regularly for the next few weeks particularly. So you may see a bit of a transformation where it goes a little less from being just an aspiration to love ourselves and become a bit of a deep intention where love's entering our thoughts, it's entering our words and our actions in ways that is very transformative. And when we practice our mindful, loving kindness meditation, we're going to observe both how much peace and happiness and lightness is already within us that we already have. And we're also going to notice perhaps our anger, our irritation, our fear, and our anxiety, and all the worries that are also in us. and that's okay. And that's becoming aware of all these feelings that really are a part of who we are and what our experiences are right now and whenever we're practicing. And this awareness is our self-understanding deepening. We can see what feelings contribute to our unhappiness and also the power of loving ourselves and cultivating a heart of compassion. And so to practice this today, we're going to take a seat, a dignified posture, so to speak, or we could lie down. If you want to lie down, go ahead. We've been sitting for a while, but I'm going to sit myself and I welcome you to take the most dignified position that's comfortable to you. And we're going to start just by noticing our breath and trying to have a nice, long, calm, easy breath. And if you have any trouble breathing because of allergies right now, goodness knows there's pollen in the air, just breathing as comfortably as possible. And as we start to breathe and calm, I'm going to welcome us to recite these phrases. I've planned for us to do each one 4 times, so 4 breaths per phrase. I'll say it aloud, and I definitely encourage you to say it to yourself, sort of like with your own inner voice. And so sitting still and allowing ourselves to breathe easy. You can let your eyes be closed and soft, or your eyes can be open, looking at the beautiful world and the beautiful words that are on the screen. That's okay too. You don't have to keep your eyes closed to meditate, but it's sometimes nice to bring more of our awareness to the inner and the more subtle world or experiences we're having. And we'll start just by saying these affirmations to ourselves. And so as we're breathing in, may I be happy. And breathing out, I am happy. Breathing in, may I be happy. Breathing out, I am happy. Breathing in, may I be happy. And breathing out, I am happy. Breathing in, may I be happy. As you breathe out, I am happy. And on your next breath in, may I be safe. As you exhale, I am safe. As you inhale, may I be safe. And as you exhale, I am safe. Breathing in, may I be safe. And breathing out, I am safe. And breathing in, may I be safe. And breathing out, I am safe. On your next breath in, may I be at ease. And breathing out, I am at ease. Breathing in, may I be at ease. And breathing out, I am at ease. Breathing in, may I be at ease. Breathing out, I am at ease. And breathing in, may I be at ease. And breathing out, I am at ease. Breathing in and breathing out. And our last phrase, breathing in, may I be peaceful. And breathing out, I am peaceful. Breathing in, may I be peaceful. And breathing out, I am peaceful. Breathing in, may I be peaceful. And breathing out, I am peaceful. Breathing in and breathing out. And on your next breath in, I recommend taking your hand to your heart. You can take both hands or just one. And just taking a moment to say thanks to ourselves and thanks to each other for trying out this little exercise, this brief little exercise today. And for sharing in this time, doing it together. And hoping that we can carry this feeling of feeling happy and safe, at ease and peaceful with us for the rest of our day and sharing it with those around us. You can let your hands relax. And just some closing remarks about this. It's recommended that when we do our practice, we start with ourselves. Until we're able to love and take care of ourselves, we're really not much help to those around us. And so after that, and we're practicing with ourselves, we then can practice with others. It's recommended to start with someone you like. It's a little bit easier to wish them well and good. And then someone maybe who's neutral to you. And also someone you love, because sometimes love gets in the way and we don't see people for who they really are and understand them with depth. And so sometimes that can be hard, where you start seeing them being like, oh, wow, whoa, what's all that love been doing to me? And then you do it for someone that you're like, oh, I can't even stand the thought of them. And you wish them well and you wish them peace. And it really helps us cultivate this loving, kind heart and this sort of compassionate heart. And so we can create more compassionate communities and a more compassionate world. It's all that philosophy, right? That kind of peace begins with each and every one of us. And so I thought this was a nice way to maybe get us just practicing a little bit of loving kindness and realizing kind of what we said here today. It really has all to do with our inner world and our inner self. Like that's where our real value comes from and who we are really resides. And the body was kind of the happen chance, you know, of coming into the world and getting this chance to live a life. And it's really wrong that so many things exist to make us feel bad for what exactly our happen chance is. I have to say how much I really appreciate all the comments and all of the the word shared today, I was laughing along, and I wonder if Abby Lee, you felt the same, that all of this message and this sappy cheesiness really reminds me of what we're trying to do with the We All Belong tour, where we're trying to spread that message of really that we all belong. And just like everybody's a good body and all bodies belong, us as persons in the same way. So I just say all that to say thank you so much. And I do hope that if you'd like to, you can continue using these words. I would look into Thich Nhat Hanh if you like meditation and mindfulness. He's brilliant. He's like in his 90s now and he's still doing his thing. It's really, really incredible. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything, you always have our contact at the AGW and we're happy to do follow-up. But thank you so much for the presentation today. It was really, I learned a lot and I really appreciated kind of the stories you were telling and the context and the history to really help understand, like, why do we think the things we do today? Oh yeah, because of history, it happens, and here we are trying to kind of deal with it now that we're in the middle of it. And Michaela, what a great tour. It was really nice to see so many different types of bodies and I like the way that we could draw inspiration from each of them. So thanks, everyone. This was a real pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Derrick. That was lovely. And thank you, Marissa and Stephanie, for your presentation as well. Brilliant. So knowledgeable, both of you, and so compassionate and so willing to share. Thank you all for everything. And thank you to our special guests today for joining us, all of our attendees. We hope you liked the presentation. I know everyone was pretty quiet today, but that's all right. Emma says, thanks so much, AGW plus BANA. This was a wonderful presentation. I loved all aspects of it. Oh, thanks, Emma. We're so glad. Derrick says, thank you so much, everyone. Lots of hearts. Yeah, and if you feel like reliving it, I'll have it uploaded sometime this week. Abby Lee says this was awesome. Thank you, Abby Lee. I'm so glad that you could join us. Yeah, and Derrick says, I have to run for a call. Okay, yeah, you take off. Thanks, Derrick. Wishing you the best as well. So yeah, thank you everyone once again. If you have any questions or concerns now or later on, Alyssa says, this was such a lovely event to be able to attend. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Alyssa. I'm glad that you liked it. Yeah, and just if anyone has anything that they need addressed or have questions about after the fact, you can email me at any time, or BANA as well. They put their information in there, and I really enjoyed myself today. This doesn't feel like work to me, so thank you all so much for making it such a great experience. Me too, says Marissa. Awesome. Good to hear. I'll stick around for another couple minutes just in case anyone has any final things to say. But of course, this is the end of our tour and our presentation now. It was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. And thank you to Marissa and Stephanie. Wow, like just your compassion just shines through Zoom, and I just loved everything you shared. And the artwork was wonderful. Michaela, you did such a great job, and Derrick too. So that was lovely. It was a lovely way to spend the afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Abby.
good day.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're feeling okay after your vaccine.
I'm very loopy, but we're good.
Oh, are you? I didn't even know. I wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't said
good.
anything.
Good, because the lightning talk is tonight, so we're just gonna put on the presenter face and. So
Let me. You know what? I'll be there tonight. So if anything happens, I can take over.
Oh,
I'll co-pilot for you.
Perfect.
Yes, that's another thing. If anyone, I don't like whoever's left over. Lightning Talk is tonight. Lightning Talks with community creators. We're talking to members of the Windsor Symphony Orchestra for about an hour. They're each going to get to say a little bit about their work. So if anyone's
still... plug.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. I said thanks for the plug.
You're welcome.
What time is it at?
What's that?
What time is it at?
That's at 7, Abby Lee, right?
7 o'clock. I'll drop the link in the chat. You can register either on Zoom, or if you would like, we're also going to do it on Facebook Live. So you can tune in there, but I will just drop this in there. Yay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to join in. It should be a lot of fun. But yes, thank you again for this. This was wonderful.
Thank you, Abby Lee, and thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Stephanie, and thank you to our guests who are still here. But yeah, we have events constantly virtually, even though we're going to reopen pretty soon. So we're going to keep our operations hybrid digital. So I put the events page at the top and the virtual tour page at the top of the very top of the chat there if anyone wants to check that out. I'll be sending emails afterwards with the links anyhow, so you can see them then. All right. Okay. I've kept everyone here long enough. I'm gonna gonna let us go now. Everyone have a great afternoon. Take care.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Michaela.
Thank you.